On behalf of the entire St. Paul's Parish community, I want to welcome all of the Archdiocese to the House of Mercy, which is the community center, former Agudas Achim Synagogue. At the community center in the House of Mercy, we have the privilege of presenting to the Archdiocese and to God's people over 138 miracles related to the Eucharist that have occurred from the 6th century on in many, many different countries. We first was introduced to this wonderful, wonderful exposition by Father Krikor Shaheen, a wonderful priest from the Marriage Tribunal. He teaches at Mock, and he helps a great deal at St. Paul's in our Spanish ministry. He is just such a blessing. Well, he approached the Spanish community and gave the suggestion that this international exposition be created here at St. Paul's. And he and the Spanish community put together a wonderful day of over 300 people who gathered to celebrate Christ's presence in the Eucharist. I was so inspired by Father Krikor's ministry and the Spanish community that we were moved to create another exposition, but for a longer period. Father Krikor did a beautiful job, but it was a one-day experience. But what St. Paul has done is created a wonderful, prayerful set of exhibits in which our wonderful people can come and visit St. Paul's Community Center, the House of Mercy, anytime during the week and even on the weekends. The theme of our Eucharistic celebration is Christ has pitched his tent among us. You may not know it, but the tabernacle that we reverence so intently in our churches really comes from a word which means tent. And Christ has pitched his tent among us. So what we have done is we've taken different countries, all their miracles, and we've placed them in a number of tents that reflect the culture of that particular country. And each one of those tents has the different miracles from that particular country. How did this all begin internationally? A young man named Carlo Acutis, born in London, but an Italian citizen, very early on in his life, exhibited a tremendous love for Mary and the Eucharist. He prayed daily, he prayed the rosary. He was so moved by the Eucharist and the love of Mary. As he got older, he became fascinated with the internet. And he began to investigate all of the different miracles related to the Eucharist throughout the world. And he created posters reflecting the many miracles of the Eucharist in different countries. And he and his family had different exhibits of these different posters throughout Italy. At the age of 15, it was discovered that he had leukemia. And his approach to his death was very heroic, very loving, very inspirational. And with his death, people began to reflect on his life and moved for his eventual canonization. And his family has continued these exhibits, and they're on the internet, Miracoli Eucharistici. You can find it right on the internet. And they gave us permission to download each one of these posters, and we spent the money to print them all up, and they are present in this exposition. The first exhibit room is in honor of Carlos Acutis, who has been given a date for beatification in October of this year in Assisi, the city he loves so much. And when you come into the exhibit, you'll see an explanation of the international exposition of the Eucharistic miracles. Who is Carlo Acutis? And the gift that he has given us. And then because he's Italian, the first tent reflects Italy. And as you move around in a prayerful way, you can come anytime during office hours and even in the evening when we have meetings. And you're able to go to one tent at a time, pray, sit there. We also have little booklets in Spanish. So when someone comes in Spanish, they're able to sit there and to read the material in Spanish. And also we have our Eucharistic chapel here. And so the true presence of the Eucharist is here in our former Agudas Achim Synagogue, the House of Mercy. You're always welcome to come and visit and really become people who love the Eucharist. For each one of us, often Sunday Mass is an obligation, or I'd like to say sometimes, unfortunately, fire insurance. I don't want to go to hell, so I'm going to show up to Mass. And my joke is, I'm going to Mass no matter what. I don't want to go to hell, but that's my parking spot. That's my pew. No cariño at all. We don't want that. And what Carlos Acutis does for us, he brings the Eucharist onto an affectionate level. Let's just read a couple of his lines. He says, my life plan is to always be connected to Jesus. And the icon that was created is Jesus at the Last Supper with the Blessed Sacrament. And Carlos Acutis has his head upon the chest of Jesus, as John the Beloved would have in the Eucharist. Again, an affectionate sense of the Eucharist, not this obligation, not this boredom experience. So Carlo Acutis brought this affection. Secondly, he says, living with Jesus, for Jesus, and in Jesus. As here at St. Paul's, we very much studied the theology of Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection, always practicing the presence of God. So coming across Carlos Acutis, this young boy who wanted to live in the presence of God, touched me a great deal. Again, when it was brought to me by Father Cricor and our Spanish community. It's a gift to me. The other line is, our destination must be what is infinite, not what is finite. This young man knew he was made for heaven. Infinity is our homeland. We have been expected in heaven since time immemorial. And this is a great line for our young people. You know, young people, they all want to look cool. They all want to, have the right hairdo, the right tennis shoes, the right whatever. Carlos Acutis says, all are born with their own originality, but many die as a photocopy of the world, a photocopy of somebody on the internet. And again, what a theological statement by a young man who died at 15. So our prayer is this, that this being caught up in the affectionate love of God that Carlos Acutis clearly manifested will be something that we'll catch on to. And that people will come to the former Agudas Achim Synagogue, the House of Mercy, where they can see the presence of God, but also to see and to reverence the Torah, which is lent to us by our Jewish brothers and sisters. And to see all these exhibits, and also memorabilia from all the different countries. And you have to keep coming back, because each week we're adding more and more to our wonderful exhibits. So we invite everyone to come to St. Paul's Community Center, the former Agudas Achim Synagogue, where so many of you came for a quinceañera, a prom, a wedding, a bar mitzvah. Come back home and enjoy this great House of Mercy and be caught up in the affectionate love of God as he is present for us in Eucharist. Historically, Brother Ed Locke was really the home and the custodian of so many artifacts in the Archdiocese. A pastor would have a vestment, he'd have a lectionary, a sacramentary, a candle, something he thought was historic, and he knew that Brother Ed would cherish it and find the right home. Often it was that Brother Ed would be the one given these, or should I say given responsibility for these items, knowing that he would hand them off to another parish who needed them. So he really is the one who we celebrate. And when the Archdiocese had made a decision to make their archives more of a documentary ministry, which is very important. Documents are very important, the history, your baptismal records, all these. It's a very intensive ministry just to do documentation. So we as a parish formed the San Antonio People of Faith Historical Museum with Brother Ed Locke and Kathleen Muldoon and a number of other people, and we have become the custodians of all of the many things that were handed off to Brother Locke, and we have tried to preserve them in a way of dignity. But what has happened is, because we are the place that has taken on the responsibility of all those things that Brother Ed collected, people continuously bring us things. We just, from a parish, there was an old Bible, an ancient Bible from a family, and they called us up and said, we don't know what to do with it. Will you take it? I said, sure, you know. Some people that were involved in the papal visit have brought us things. Just constantly people say, we want to bring these things and we want them preserved. Give you an example. We have a wonderful man named Sam, and because I'm 63, I can't remember his last name, Sam, I apologize. But he started what was called the Youth Canteen in the 60s. It was a place, it was a nightclub kind of for teenagers. And he went to Bishop, should I say, Monsignor Leopold, our pastor, and he asked for a recommendation. We have that letter. And and then we have letters from all the families who says, my goodness, I can't believe what you've done for this group of young people who are so energetic, shall we say, and you brought them to a safe place where they can kind of enjoy each other's company. So we have an exhibit here of the youth canteen. And other people. Right now, I was just talking to one of Bishop Jonta's workers, one of their colleagues, and they're doing the beautiful Polish Cultural Center. Well, many of the items that Bishop Jonta has preserved, Sanyo, Catholic TV, many things don't really fit perfectly in the Polish Cultural Center. So we're in dialogue that all of his items would be placed here at St. Paul's. And one of the best places, we have a little library that Bishop Jonta uses for his wonderful organization of the Polish Cultural Center. And when they eventually move out, I said to them, why don't we just display all of his wonderful works there? We can still use it as a meeting room. So anyone who has anything of historical significance, we'd love to be the custodians of it for God's people. Also, very importantly, if you have any Jewish relics, anything that has to do with the Jewish community, we have one room reserved totally to our Jewish brothers and sisters, the Jeremiah room. So anything like that. Also, we'd love to have volunteers. We need docents. You have to understand is none of us are professional museum people. And this is like our 5th or 6th ministry. And so we do it in sporadically, but wouldn't it be wonderful to have a group of volunteers who could greet people at the door, explain the different exhibits, explain our wonderful friend Carlo Acutis, explain the Eucharistic miracles, the different countries. It would be wonderful. So we really would love to have this be a place in which the Archdiocese sees as a magnet to experience God's mercy, especially His mercy as expressed in the Eucharist, the true presence. For Christ has truly pitched His tent in San Antonio, in every church that has a tabernacle, and in a special way, God willing, here at the House of Mercy. Here we are in the former Agudas Achim Synagogue, and you'll notice a number of tents throughout our wonderful worship space. Again, tabernacle, where we reserve the Blessed Sacrament, Christ's presence. The term means tent. So we have tents throughout our exhibit, reminding that Christ has pitched His tent in Italy, pitched His tent in all of the Latin American countries, pitched His tent in France and Germany. And then as you move along, we have all the other countries. There are certain countries that have just a limited number, and we have placed those miracles in our Blessed Sacrament Chapel. And we go to our museum entrance. Here in our museum, the first thing we see is an image of Brother Locke, again, our hero who inspired us to love the history of San Antonio. If you have a question about the history of San Antonio, it's Brother Locke to answer it. And we just got these wonderful pieces on our Native Americans. What's happened is Brother Locke provided these for us, and then this wonderful family came in and said, here's more about our Native Americans. And then we continued to the missions, and then First Bishop of Galveston, and then all the bishops of San Antonio. But most importantly here is if here we have our Blessed Sacrament Chapel, and we'll reverence the Eucharist here. And so when we established our House of Mercy and our Eucharistic Chapel, we made a point of choosing a tabernacle that reflected our Jewish brothers and sisters. So this is the Ark of the Covenant. In fact, we purchased it from a Jewish company, and we reworked it and turned it into a tabernacle. And obviously, Christ's presence is here. And then you'll see around the different miracles from Belgium, and then Austria here. And again, anytime during the week or even on the weekend, if a staff member isn't available, this door will be closed and the doors will be locked, but the Eucharist will be moved here so someone could reverence the Blessed Sacrament even when this chapel is not open, and they can do it through the door here. We reflect different images of the missions, a wonderful exhibit of our people from the Canary Islands. What a great gift they are, aren't they? They're beautiful. As we move through, we see the other bishops, and then the first bishop, Bishop Drashik, was the first archbishop. And then one of my favorite exhibits is Archbishop Lucy, because he's a Californian. He's an LA priest. He was ordained Bishop of Amarillo and then Archbishop of San Antonio. The thing that I love about Archbishop Lucy is he had a great love of unions and the working person and the Hispanic. One of the things we found with Brother Ed was this very interesting item. This must have been given to him when he was still a priest in California. And the people are thanking Father Robert Lucy for his work with the organized union labor movement. Also, Archbishop Lucy was a great, great, great proponent for our Hispanic brothers and sisters. He made a decree of one of the first celebrations of the Eucharist in Latin for Our Lady of Guadalupe that was approved and put in the sacramentary, which is a beautiful work. For me, Archbishop Lucy is special because, number one, he is an LA priest, as I am an LA priest. Secondly, he had a great love for the poor and for our Hispanic brothers and sisters and the working person. And the other thing that touches me is that he had some issues regarding his mode of leadership that could be interpreted, ironically, as a bit aristocratic and a bit authoritarian in the 60s. And for me, as a canon lawyer, it's important for me to study the spirituality of leadership. And it's I who am flawed in many ways and made so many mistakes in leadership, reflecting on Archbishop Lucy's life, a man of such love and care, but yet couldn't always translate it. And a number of priests became very angry at him and they left the priesthood. It's quite a historical moment, but for me, it's always a reminder that we have to constantly be evaluating our leadership skills and constantly live with our heads and hearts in heaven as we become leaders in the church. Because if not, we can easily become dictatorial, non-collaborative, us against them mentality. So whenever I come across this wonderful reminder of Archbishop Lucy, it reminds me of all of my mistakes. I've got some good qualities. I care for people like Archbishop Lucy, but he really needed healing when it came to this approach of leadership. But again, it's it's touching. It's not talking badly of the man. The man is in eternity, and he wants his experience to be a model of healing and leadership growth for all who are in leadership, from lay people to bishops and the Holy Father. We have his successor. We have Archbishop Fury. Then we have Archbishop Flores. We only have a few images of Flores because we have an entire room dedicated to him. And one of my favorite images is of my own Archbishop, Archbishop Gomez. This particular work was in the archives, and it didn't have a home yet. It's one of those most beautiful works by Lionel Sosa. Do you know how important that person is, that artist for San Antonio? And it needed a home. And when we took on the responsibility of these artifacts, St. Paul's, the San Antonio People of Faith Historical Museum, this is where we placed it. And I think it really, really shows beautifully here. And again, a wonderful archbishop, and secondly, done by such a prominent person of San Antonio, Lionel Sosa. These are images that have to do with the popes. This one is unbelievable. This one was provided by Archbishop Fury. When Archbishop Fury was in Rome, this item, which is part of a cassock worn by a cardinal. Well, this one was worn by Pius XII when he was elected. And through the grace of God, Archbishop Fury received this, brought it back, it was preserved, and now the San Antonio People of Faith Historical Museum have it available for God's people anytime they can visit. We have all these other images of the different popes throughout, and we tried to emphasize their role in helping the Jewish people. For us as Catholics, and many Jewish people have come to believe that Pius XII was a noble Gentile who did help many Jews. And so when we discuss the different popes, we discuss their relationship to our Jewish brothers and sisters, because this is a former synagogue. John the 23rd, when he was nuncio, he very much was involved in the helping of Jews. He was in Budapest and helped Jews. Paul VI worked with Pius XII. Here we have other images of the different miracles of Croatia and Egypt. Here is my favorite room. This is the Jeremiah room. This room would have been the office of the cantor of the Eucharistic Synagogue. And in 1962, the wonderful cantor asked Maurice Schmidt to please paint a mural reflecting an Old Testament, or should I say Jewish experience from the Jewish scriptures. And he chose Jeremiah being pulled out of the cistern by the black Ethiopian. Well, this room did not look like this when I arrived. It was covered with paneling and a drop ceiling. So we decided to clean it up, possibly make it a chapel. So I was pulling off all of the plywood, and this huge image arrived. We didn't know what it was. We contacted the Jewish community of the Eucharistic, asking them, do you know who Maurice Schmidt is? And by grace and by suffering, what happened was this. They contacted Maurice Schmidt, and he wrote a letter to us through Agudas Akim, thanking us for saving it. But what happened was this, is that because it was the high holidays, totally understandable, our Jewish brothers and sisters did not send us the material. So there was about a week or two that I was gone from the parish. And in the confusion, let's call it grace, it was totally covered up. And, I had some feelings, but I had to accept life. My theory is accept life on life's terms. Acceptance answers all my problems. So I just kept it in my heart. And then in June, we get this letter and this collection from Agudas Achim, from Maury Schmidt, saying, thank you for preserving my mural. Well, I'm now in a dilemma because it doesn't exist anymore. It had been covered up. So I began to think. I remember when I was in Poland, the beautiful image of Mary that has the marks on her face that were put there by the soldiers. You know, it's Our Lady of Czestochowa. And those marks have made it sacred. So before this happened, a wonderful volunteer had our Divine Mercy image that we had purchased in Poland. It was painted in Poland. It was quite an expensive project. He was moving it, and it's a triptych. So the door is closed, and when you open it, it is the Divine Mercy, and you close it. On the outside as an image of the tabernacle of our Jewish brothers and sisters. He was moving it, and it fell, and there's a huge gash on the front door. And I went to the volunteer, and I said, you have made this Divine Mercy image sacred. And I told him the story of Our Lady of Czestochowa. So I said to myself, could that image have been saved? So what happened is I got water, and you can see it here. I got water, and we started, and it was there. Because what had happened is the contractor, because when the paneling was put on the wall, they put this glue, and he could not just paint over it. So what he did was he stuccoed over it. And it was still there. And we've kept it in this state, and it really fits into this beautiful, beautiful building. Again, there was a drop ceiling, and we were going to make this a Blessed Sacrament chapel originally. So we chose chandeliers with the wheat, and those are cement beams, and we just enclosed them. It's become quite a blessing. So it's June, and Maurice Schmidt comes in July, so I'm able to show his image, his painting. He comes back, and he signs it on the anniversary. He had painted this in July, and he painted it again, July 2014. And you know what he explained to me? And this is beautiful for the time we're in. He painted this image because he said the black man, the Ethiopian, was going to lift the white man out of the pit of prejudice. Isn't that a beautiful message for this time in which our country is in such a difficult situation regarding people's perception of race relationships? Again, the black man is going to lift us out of prejudice. So this is called the Jeremiah room, and it's such a blessing. And we have images from the island of Rion, Switzerland, Spain, and then it comes into the icon room. Now this icon room was originally originally it was the office of the rabbi. And when I came, it was a storage room. So we cleared it out. And again, this is the first time when the drop ceiling was removed, we decided, I said to David Schreier, why don't we encapsulate them and make beams here? This is the first room we renovated. And actually there was a wall here, and then we created a door so you can come through. And so I obtained these. I scour all the antique dealerships and auctions. These two items are from a Russian Orthodox church. This is St. Nicholas, and this is St. John the Baptist. Beautiful works. We did not do a thing to them. I could not resist. Again, kind of an advocation is I'm trying to collect antiques for our community center. And this particular organ must have been in a church, and it is a pump organ. And I just felt that it fit in beautifully with this piece. One of the things you have to understand is is the pieces that I love and that I bring to San Antonio's People of Faith Historical Museum and to the parish are items that are no longer appreciated by most people. Most young people want mid-century. I want 1800s, 1700s. And so just to share, we are able to do a rescue mission, but also at a very inexpensive price. It's really quite a ministry. And what I try to do is I find ways in which we don't take the parish funds, a collection to do this. I find ways of trying to raise the money. We have a wonderful room dedicated to Catholic TV. One of our great friends in San Antonio is Bishop Yonta. When Bishop Yonta was a priest and an auxiliary bishop here, he did so many things. He did Sanyo. He did Catholic TV. I think he was the editor of the Catholic newspaper. He's an unbelievable bishop who is still vibrant. Well, we dedicated one room for Catholic TV and Bishop Yonta. So we'd like to invite you into these are different items that were historical reminders of our Catholic ministry. Here's all your little tapes here. Here's the different programming. Here's some different letters and things like that, Bishop Yonta. So it's been a great, great experience for us because Catholic TV is so important for so many people. So again, we're so proud to have this in honor of Bishop Yonta and all the ministry of Catholic TV. The miracles in which we say Christ pitched his tent in France. So here are all the different many miracles that happened in France. And what we love about this exposition is we just put together things we already had. By chance, we had a lamp as the Eiffel Tower, and we placed it here. This beautiful fireplace was something that I found, again, at the auctions. And doesn't it fit in nicely? Because again, we didn't want these miracles to simply be like a science project. We wanted some cariño, so people could sit in this tent and read in English or Spanish and the great miracle of Christ in the Eucharist. We as St. Paul have preserved our Jewish brothers and sisters' windows. We did a whole renovation of all these different windows. Those pictorials are probably over 100 years old. They predate Agudas Achim here at St. Paul's. They probably came from the previous synagogue and were placed here when this facility was built. This beautiful image of Mary, Our Lady Guadalupe, Queen of Heaven, hovers over all the tents. This beautiful image here was created for the papal visit of John Paul II in 1987, I think. And it was done by prisoners in county jail. And so it becomes twofold. It becomes that image of Mary, Queen of Heaven, hovering over all these Eucharistic tents. And the second part becomes part of our Latin American exposition. Here are all the churches, the 7 churches of the West Side. And all of these are miracles of Spain and Latin America. And we have mingled in the Latin American theme with our wonderful Archbishop Flores. So this is called the Archbishop Flores room. So prior to this exposition, these were just items that were preserved to honor Bishop Flores. And what we've done is we've added the miracles of Mexico and other countries. These were just vestments that were left over that were given to us by Brother Locke. And we took care of them and cleaned them all up. It's been a great privilege for us. This has been a great blessing. Just to show you something that, again, Brother Locke did it all. So when the Chancery changed its name from Chancery to the Pastoral Center, the sign was removed. And he saved the sign. Maybe many people thought, well, what's the use of it? But let me tell you, for us, it's such a blessing to be able to have the privilege of preserving this memory of San Antonio. And remember, I'm not an LA priest. I am an LA priest, I'm not a San Antonio priest, but I've fallen in love with the people, the culture, the faith of San Antonio. And the privilege to be able to put all this together is just quite humbling for me, quite humbling. So as we continue, because of the great kindness of Catholic TV, we obtained a wonderful group of panels, room dividers, done by a wonderful priest of San Antonio whose hobby was needlework. And it is a collection of flowers. So when we put together our exhibit, we said, what country is famous for flowers? The Netherlands. So all of these miracles are from the Netherlands. This area is our Divine Mercy. This wonderful painting was done in Poland, and we obtained this in 2013 in honor of the canonization of John Paul II and John the 23rd. The images are from Poland. The triptych itself is from my home parish in Hollywood. A man did it for me. And what happens here is this, is that in this interior area, it is all the Polish miracles. And so depending on the event, these close up and that image of Jesus comes closer, and this becomes a little chapel. It is in this setup here because we needed the seats for the masses. But there'll be times in which these chairs are removed and it becomes a little intimate chapel as we move that image forward. The tradition of a Corpus Christi procession requires that there be a number of altars placed throughout the procession in which the Blessed Sacrament would be placed and adored and move on to the next altar. So we're in the process of creating small little altars that reflect the life of God's people in the Eucharist. This particular altar is dedicated to our deacons. We notice the cross and the deacon's stole crossing it. Brother Locke had this particular dalmatic was given to him for his care. Some priest at one point said, well, our parish doesn't need it. Brother Ed will find a home for it, I know. And this has become part of our exhibit. One of my deacons came across these. It was about a year ago in which these dalmatics, this is the vestment of the deacon, they were giving these away. And he gave me a few of them. These were dalmatics used at the Cathedral of San Antonio. So my guess is these were the first dalmatics used in the modern installation of, or reinstitution of, the permanent diaconate, I'm guessing. So at one time there must have been a whole collection of these, and we have about 4 or 5 of them. And they didn't come from Brother Ed, but just a deacon had seen them and he said, well, Monsignor would appreciate it. Here's something that's very nice here, is we were given these beautiful books on the Sistine Chapel. These are beautiful books. It's a famous collection here of the Sistine Chapel. And again, we have it connected to our Italian exhibit. As we move along here, we're putting together a place in which as we honor the deacons, this, and again, it's just being developed. This is called, part of our museum is called the Domestic Church, where faith begins. So we have one room that's totally dedicated to those elements that would be in your home that would promote faith. And so we have a whole museum. So what we've done here is we just took a few items and we took prayer books that Brother Ed had that would be used by the laity. But we have tons of things that would have been statues or different devotional items that would have been in the home. So this becomes another altar. The altar is the table, the family table of Father Francis, the San Damiano cross. This is another fun little altar we're putting together. And this reflects young people. And this is the image of the teen canteen that was done in the 60s. And the great, great, great Sam Kinsey, who had put this ministry together. And there are letters from Monsignor Leopold approving the ministry or the nightclub and all that. So again, we're going to collect items that reflect the life of young people. Behind here also is, by the way, is our House of Mercy gift shop. Then also here is we have a museum for men who stepped up to the plate. It's called the McGivney, in honor of Father McGivney. And that is in this room where these French doors are. I use this on Tuesday night. I do a dinosaur race in which kids guess which one is gonna win. But all this furniture reflects kind of a period of Father McGivney. And there is a sword that was a replica of the sword that Queen Isabella would have used to knight Columbus. Here is Father who established the patrician movement, a movement, Father Brosson, who established the ministry to those who are addicted to drugs. So it was a historic movement. And then we just have different items here of men that stepped up to the plate. Here's something that Brother Ed had. It was just a box hidden away. And this is of, I think his name is Father Kelly. Father Foster. He was the chaplain of the fire department. So here is this items, Here we can have them preserved. And here's a picture of him. So at some point in his life, when he died, someone said, I've got all these things. And now he's an example for us of someone who stepped up to the plate. Now, our goal here is that these windows be covered with stained glass windows. Now, I purchased these at an auction, and we're trying to sell them or use them in which these whole windows will be covered with stained glass that will really make this room beautiful. And I think that ends our visit to the House of Mercy, the former Agudas Achim Synagogue, and our San Antonio People Faith Historical Museum, which is sponsoring this great international exhibit for the Blessed Sacrament. For Christ has truly pitched his tent in San Antonio, in all its churches, and especially in the home of every person of faith.